Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 17. We don't really have point fives anymore with chopped over. This is episode 17 of the Mousetrap Podcast. I am Carter Thweet, joined as always by my co-host Isaac Hardy.
Hey,
Um, I know that you guys like guests. We hear the comments about, you guys need to have more guests. And since we don't have Chopped anymore, we do want to have guests for these Dynasty episodes. I reached out to TJ because obviously he was involved in a big trade today, but he was unavailable. Reached out to Grant because he was on the other end. Actually, I didn't reach out because he's working at Amazon. I didn't want to have an unrelated person on to talk about this. So we hear you. We will have guests, just not this time. But Isaac, if we go ahead and get on to the agenda for tonight. Obviously, we'll go through our Week 11 recap, Week 11 power rankings, and Week 12 picks. And then we will talk about the big trade that went through today that caused a lot of debate. And then Isaac and I will have a mock debate about vetoes. This has been a topic of discussion. And so we will each take a side. It won't necessarily be our opinions, but just making some points back and forth. Isaac, a lot of interesting stuff to talk about. More interesting episode, I think, than when we woke up this morning. Anything you're particularly excited for?
I'm kind of excited to go over our recap. Honestly, I think we just had some interesting outcomes in some of our games this week.
Absolutely. It feels like so long ago with all that's gone down since then. And I apologize. I called it week 11 recap and week 12 picks, and you had apparently already changed that. So well done. This is the week 10 recap. We start off with you in a game that really would have been devastating for Charlie if he lost it. I mean, I'm sure it's not fun for you either. High scoring game. He takes you down 161 to 143.
Yeah, I mean, crazy game from Jonathan Taylor. That was a tough one. I was at church and just seeing Jonathan Taylor scores third touchdowns. Like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, I know he's been having a great fantasy season, but for him to drop 50 the week I planned was really tough. And, I feel like my team did really well. I had the second highest point total of anyone this week. I just caught an unlucky break, but I had three of my starters on bye: Javonte Williams, CeeDee Lamb, and Pickens all would have played for me in a perfect situation. So I'm on I think a 3 game skid right now, which is tough, but it's just been kind of bye week hell for me.
Yeah, the fact that you score 143 with all those guys out is pretty impressive. And yeah, great game for Charlie. His big three showed up. Puka with 17, Ladd with 20, and of course the wild game from Jonathan Taylor. We then move on to a game that was maybe closer than anticipated. Logan, um, kind of eking out a win against TJ. This one was really close for a while. Logan wins it by 10. He puts up 111. What'd you see here?
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like some of Logan's guys that were doing really well just like the season, kind of like surprisingly well, like a J.K. Dobbins, a Pittman, are starting to cool off a little bit. Like Keenan Allen's definitely cooled off. Chuba Hubbard's not even the starter there anymore. He lost Tucker Kraft. So this is just a Logan team that, if you look at fewest points against, I think he's at the very bottom. It's just interesting to see how he performs in the playoffs. I think he's in the bottom by far. You and Logan, I think, are the bottom two in points against. So something to just consider moving forward.
Yeah, and then we move on to a game that I don't think there's a ton to talk about. It went about how you would expect. Nixon beats Tucker by about 20. Huge game from Devon Achane, 40 points. He was kind of overshadowed by JT this week, which is a shame because he went off. The absolute poster child for Nixon has to trade for a wide receiver. Just the worst wide receiver game you could imagine. 7, 3, and 6 from his three wide receivers. But Josh Allen has a good game. Achane goes off, and he gets the win over a Tucker team that I know Tucker's team isn't good, but I mean, they did even worse than I think they normally would. Garrett Wilson, not that Tucker wants to win, but Garrett Wilson kind of screws him over there.
I think the two things Tucker's walking out of this game feeling really good about is one, Travion Henderson is actually playing football now, which is definitely really exciting for him. And then Marvin Harrison, like, didn't put up a ton of points, but he had 12 targets. Like, 3 for 12, obviously not ideal, but um, that's kind of what you want out of like a wide receiver stud in fantasy. Is just a target hog, a guy who just gets the rock swinging his way a lot. So, yeah, definitely, I would say a good week for Tucker. He lost, and some of his young players are starting to perform.
Yeah, good point there. We move on to another game that I guess went kind of how you'd expect. I think maybe you picked Tyler, if I'm not mistaken, but he falls 123 to 97 to Mr. Austin Davis, even though Jordan Love had a very poor performance, whereas Tyler's QB1, Dylan Gabriel, actually, for fantasy wise, played pretty well, but was not enough to get Chitty the win here.
Yeah, well, obviously talk more about Chitty's team, I think, in the power rankings. But the interesting thing here is like what to do with Austin. Because we've talked kind of all year he lacks like that stud. Like he doesn't have like a go-to guy where you're like, if Monday Night Football, like he's down 20, does he have a dude that you actually think would get him those 20 points? And he's like, he doesn't. So it's just kind of curious. He's 4-6 now. He's very likely going to make the playoffs. I was just kind of curious to see maybe if he makes a couple of moves over this weekend to try and go down or maybe go back up.
Yeah, from what he said in the chat today, he said he's selling old players, so that would kind of imply to me more of a tanking approach. But then we asked more about what he considers to be old, and he said can't be a guy he would have gone to high school with. So I guess he's holding on to those mid-level players. So Austin, definitely a guy to monitor as we go into the trade deadline.
Yeah, one other thing I'll just say on that is um, your term, the rosterflation of our league, kind of how he's separated into like two different tiers. Guys like a Kamara or who else did you have? Like a Debo Samuel, like Juwan Jennings. Like these are guys who's like, what really is their value? Like, what's someone going to pay for those guys? Where I almost think it might just be in Austin's best interest to like just run it and see what happens. Because like maybe someone else really values Kamara, but I'm like, I'm not even sure I'd give a third for Kamara being 30 and already being kind of questionable this season. So
Yeah,
it's interesting.
definitely strange how these guys who in a redraft league you're pretty happy to have them, but in this league contenders may not want them as much. I am proud of rosterflation. I think that might be some of my finest work. We then move on to America's Game of the Week, the term that Drake hates because the lights are always too bright for his guys whenever it's America's Game of the Week. Apparently he plays poorly, and that was the case this week. He only scores 98. My team has a solid week led by a really fine performance from Drake London early on Sunday. DJ Moore, I guess he just didn't. Yeah, he just didn't have any catches, which is kind of crazy. And Trey McBride, not enough to save Drake in this kind of underwhelming game.
Yeah, a couple of tough things for Drake. Justin Jefferson's really getting the downside of JJ McCarthy, which is really hurting his value after trading for him this season. And then Quentin Johnson. Honestly, like we've had discussions about some bad trades, and like whenever this went down, I don't think we thought it was horrible. But looking back on it, like this might be the most fleeciest fleece that's occurred in this league so far is that Quentin Johnson trade. That definitely has to hurt for Drake. Interesting, just kind of storyline with your team is Rico Dowdle being rather ineffective in the run game. Just curious to see kind of what that storyline looks like moving forward.
Ineffective is interesting. I mean, the yards per carry is not great, 18 for 53, but he scored a touchdown. I feel like he's kind of cemented himself as the guy. It wasn't like a not promising performance in my opinion, but I guess we'll see.
I mean, he's been rushing for like over 100 yards, and like this is a Saints team. And if he doesn't get that touchdown, we're looking at a dud week. And a touchdown dependent running back is a lot less valuable than a guy who's kind of consistent.
That's fair. That's very fair. We then move on to a close game, a team that wants to win, and a team that is on an absurd winning streak right now. Grant Moore, well, I actually don't know how to see it. I think he's on an 8 game winning streak. I think he started out 0-2. So just
Yeah.
absurd from Grant. He barely beats Evan 113 to 109. Obviously, we know the injury woes that Grant is having, but he still manages to pull out this win despite Davis, Mills dropping 28 points.
Well, Evan definitely could have won this game if he plays Jackson Dart, if he plays Romo Dunze instead of Parker Washington or whatever. Like he could have won this game. Um, if he plays Chris Olave, so definitely a tanking game there for Evan. So I think that honestly has to be a little concerning for Grant. Um, that he did get the win here, but it's like, okay, yeah, Rasheed Rice was out, but outside of that, this is kind of like your squad, and I guess you had Jamar Chase out too. But it's just, how much are you going to trust some of these guys when it comes down to it in the playoffs? Like, do you really want to run out Caleb Williams? Like, is that maybe in a year or two? But like right now, Harold Fannin, like you're really going down on that ship. So I don't know, even Genty's been kind of rough. So this is a team that I think looks solid. I'm just kind of curious to see what it looks like here in a few weeks.
Yeah, the one thing I will say is you mentioned Rice and Chase as the guy that he was kind of waiting on, but I know he has the two running backs as well, Trey Benson and Hampton, that he's excited to get back. So definitely not a full strength Grant team, but yeah, man, Evans' team is not that bad. Like if he just played his guys, but I know he doesn't want to, and good for him.
Yeah.
We move on now to our power rankings. I'll suggest because I know we have a lot of trade stuff to talk about. If we want to go through these kind of quickly, maybe just each hit a couple highlights. Since on your side, there's actually literally two teams that moved. Maybe just kind of hit these quickly.
Um, yeah, I mean, like the two teams I moved, or just kind of
Yeah,
pick a
well,
couple
let me
teams.
just let me just read them out real quick, and then maybe we kind of just hit some ones that we're excited to talk about. On my side, I have me at number one, then Logan, then you. I moved Grant up. I have Charlie up at five, and then I go Drake, Nixon, Austin, Evan, Tucker, Tyler, TJ. On your side, you have Logan, then me. You have Grant, and then you. So Logan, Carter, Grant, Isaac. And then Drake, Nixon, you have Charlie down at seven. You moved Austin up to eight. You moved Evan down to nine. And then you keep Tucker, Tyler, TJ. Any that you're really excited to talk about on your or my side?
I'm interested to talk about Charlie. I think he's an interesting guy. Obviously, he put up a ton of points this week, kind of on the back of Jonathan Taylor's huge game. And we've mentioned him before, like a team you don't really want to face in the first round, especially after that Puka trade. But I also think five is high. I think placing him above Drake or Nixon is tough, just because like you look at that quarterback situation, and like Sam Darnold, I think is good. But again, it's like you come to the fantasy playoffs, it's like one game for your season. Like, is that really a dude that you feel comfortable trotting out there? It's like I am not there yet with Sam Darnold. Mariota, obviously a backup. JD could actually come back this season, but like Purdy's had some injury issues. Stroud has looked kind of mid. So the quarterback position, I think, is questionable. And then it's like, okay, yeah, Jonathan Taylor and Puka are crazy, but Travis Etienne, like another kind of touchdown dependent guy. You look at those stats, 18 or 16 carries for 58 yards. Like he's not much of a receiving threat. Lad's been up and down. He's been up recently, but he could easily go down. It's like Dalton Schultz. Is that is he going to get 11 targets every week? Jamison Williams is boomer bust. So I think he's like a scary team. Like I wouldn't want to play him in one round, but I would not bet on him for 3 rounds, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. I'm a little the Drake thing is I could definitely see that going either way. The fact I have him above Drake. I'm a little surprised after a 161 point win, you wouldn't at least move him above Nixon. I know Nixon has two more wins, but you talk about living and dying by Sam Darnold. Well, okay, do you want, as we've talked about, do you want to live and die by a receiver core of Jacoby Myers, Rashid Shaheed, and Jordan Addison? Like, if I have to have one of those situations, I'll take Sam Darnold over three of those receivers and couple in the fact that, yes, I know these guys aren't amazing, but like he may have Purdy coming back, who's had 18 and 19 in the two games he's played. CJ Stroud is capable of a big game. So I don't think it's necessarily like he's going to have Darnold. And if that's the case, I just think the roster is a lot fuller. He's really good at receiver. I think Jonathan Taylor alone makes him really good at running back, and ETN's having a fine season. Whereas Nixon has the worst receiver situation in the league. So, if Charlie and Nixon played each other this week, they actually might. I can't remember. If Charlie and Nixon played each other this week, I think I'd pick Charlie. I think it's the fuller roster, more talent, less holes. And I at least feel pretty good about having him at six. Drake, again, you could have the debate, but it's a really good looking team right now.
Another one I want to just mention because we're the same 8 through 12. Austin, Evan, Tucker, Tyler, TJ. We have that exactly the same.
Hmm.
Um, I want to talk about Grant's team. We'll obviously talk about him more with this trade, and we mentioned this week. So I've got him at three. You've got him at four. I'm going to make kind of a weird argument for why his team is better than mine. Why I have him higher than me, and a lot of that comes down to just that receiver core. I've got JSN, CD, and like Pickens maybe in there, which obviously isn't ideal, but uh, Jamar Chase and Rashee Rice are two like bona fide wide receiver runs. Like Buka has been a little up and down this year, but overall been really solid. So that fills out wide receivers and the flex. And then with Genty and Hampton eventually coming back, Genty's been fine, but I think with those two guys back, that's going to be at least a solid running back room. I don't love Caleb Williams as your quarterback one. I think, after the Stafford trade with Stafford sliding into that QB1 slot the way he's been hooping this year and Williams there to two, I think Grant's really only weakness would be at that tight end position and maybe Genty catching a bad matchup. So I'm really high on Grant's team. I think his 8 game win streak is no joke.
Yeah, I guess so I have you at 3, which where you were last week. I moved Grant up 1 to 4. I just couldn't justify moving him above you when he just dropped 113 and you just dropped 143. And I think like his roster is stacked. Your roster is stacked too. I mean, your receivers, like you said, JSN and CD. You have Jameer Gibbs and then Javante, who's been outstanding. Your tight end is Tyler Warren. That's a big advantage you have over him. So I think if we're just having a stacked roster off, I think you beat him. The only reason I don't have you above Logan is because Logan is 9-1 and you're 6-4. I just can't justify a 3-win gap, but I think your roster is better. And so I can see it for Grant. But I just think you're about as stacked at his best positions and you're much more stacked at his worst positions, if that makes sense. The one thing I want to say about your team, I know we've talked about your touchable system a little bit, and I'm a bit perplexed by some of these guys. I just feel with the numbers JJ is putting up this year, I feel JJ McCarthy with the numbers, sorry, with the numbers that Justin Jefferson is putting up this year. I feel that JJ McCarthy should be extremely touchable, as I've said. I'm also surprised about Gadsden, untouchable. He's had like one good game. In fact, I feel like this is the most touchable that he should be. You should want to sell high on this random tight end who no one's ever heard of, who comes in and has a 32-point week and then 21-point week. It's like untouchable. You're not even thinking of selling high on this guy.
So yeah, I guess I can answer that both. So JJ McCarthy is 22. He has a running upside, which is always helpful for the quarterback position. While he may not be great this year, I think this would be the definition of selling low. So it's like I'm not going to trade him for, you know, a mid first because it's like I think this is the lowest his value is going to get. I think he can only get better. I trust Kevin O'Connell. And then Gadsden scored 15, 32, 21, and 14, getting like 5 to 9 targets, touchdown volume, red zone threat. His only bad game was last week when he got hurt in like the first quarter. 22-year-old rookie tight end. And I don't know if you've watched much Chargers football. That dude looks legit. Like he he's moving around the field like a guy. And you think about some of the great tight ends often aren't first round picks. If you look um like what was it? Tony Gonzalez, like not an early round pick, like Gronk wasn't, Kelsey wasn't really, Kittle's not a super early round pick. So it's really like the guys who got that dog in them. And I believe Gadsden's got that dog in him. And tight end position, especially in the tight end premium, is so valuable that I think right now be selling before his value peak. So
That's fair. I haven't watched much Chargers, but so you got me there. But I would personally be holding Gadsden out to all potential touchers. I really just like saying touchable and untouchable. That's the whole reason I did that segment. But I would at least put Gadsden on the block. But I understand why you don't. I'm pretty much good. Anything else you really want to hit on power rankings here?
now let's slide into our picks for the week. We'll move
Yes.
through these pretty quickly.
I just want to say I forgot to change it. This record is wrong. I don't know if you guys actually look at the records. I feel like we need to advertise this more because we're really close and it's kind of cool, I think, that we've kept up with this. So I am 38-16 on the year. Isaac tried to cheat me. He's not 38-16. He's 37-17. He miscounted last week. So right now I'm ahead by one. We've got, I think, 3 picks different this week. So that could definitely change. But in this matchup of a Charlie team that seems to be peaking at the right time versus a TJ team that is a coughing baby, we have both gone with Charlie in this game.
Yeah, that's a simple move on here. Tyler versus Will. You are going with Tyler here. I'm sticking with my guns on Nixon. A lot of that is just like, yeah, Tyler's got some guys, but he just consistently underperforms. It's like, do I really think Stephon Diggs is going to do well? Like, he's not been doing well. Do I really think Metcalf is going to do well? He hasn't been. Like, he's got Xavier Legette in there. He's got AJ Brown at the super flex. This is a team full of holes, lacking talent, and I just don't see it for him.
Yeah, I know I've been a Will defender, but the fact that he just continues to not make moves is worrying to me. I will say, not that this affects records, I'm picking Tyler, but for me, this pick is contingent on whether Tyler actually, sets his team, but he's been pretty good about that, about putting his guys in. And I think, he has Kittle at tight end, so if he can get Jake Ferguson in there at that flex for like a Leggett, if he puts Dak Prescott in the game for Dylan Gabriel or AJ Brown, who he has as super flex right now, he's only 8 points projected lower than Nixon, and that's without Prescott and Ferguson in the game. And I just think, when he puts those guys in, he's got a roster of solid double digit scores. And Nixon has two starting receivers projected 8 and 7. So I'm going with Tyler.
Tucker versus Austin. We're both going with Austin here. Again, this is a Tucker team that's not especially trying to win, and an Austin team that's kind of been on the rise in recent weeks.
Yeah,
With Daniel Jones on bye, Tucker literally does not have a quarterback who's going to play football this week, so I don't think there's much more to say.
yeah, and Marvin Harrison is hurt as well. It just takes a solid team to win this, and that's exactly what Austin is.
And then Drake versus Grant, we're split here. I think I went with Grant. You went with Drake. A lot of that is just, uh, you know, Drake's getting or Grant's getting some of his guys back this week, especially at that wide receiver position, getting Rice and Chase back. And they're projected like 16 and a half and 18 and a half respectively, but they've both been easily overperforming that the past few weeks. I expect that to continue. And of course, Grant's going to be putting Matthew Stafford in there instead of Geno Smith, which I think is going to help him a lot. So I think, I like Drake's team. I think he's doing well here, but I'm going with Grant.
Yeah, I just think Drake is 5 and 5, and the roster's way better than that. He just had a bad game. Grant actually asked me on PlayStation Party to make this America's Game of the Week so that Drake would sell, but I'm not going to do that because we have a better game. But I just think Drake's team can only underperform so many times. He has a massive advantage at running back as long as Trey Benson and Omari and Hampton are out. Massive advantage at tight end where he has Trey McBride. I would say he has a quarterback advantage with how Drake May has been playing. And like I said, running back advantage. Give me all of Bijan Robinson against Carolina. I know Carolina is not like a joke team. You can definitely run the ball on them. And so I just think with Grant's team still not yet fully healthy, I think Drake's stacked roster takes this game.
And then we have you versus Evan. We're both taking you here. I don't think there's much to say. A team wanting to win versus a team wanting to lose. Evan's currently projected 58 points. Um, I rest my case.
Yep, I'm with you.
And then our exciting game, me versus Logan. I'm assuming this is our game of the week.
Yes, this is America's Game of the Week, and I kind of thought I think the reason I said we had three picks different is because I thought about picking Logan here, but I didn't. So we only have two picks different. I just think Logan is, he hasn't made any trades and he hasn't really kept up in my mind with rosterflation. I think he's a little bit on fraud watch. He just almost lost to TJ. And I mean, your roster's just insane. You've got CD coming back. You're no longer in bye week hell. I just don't think Logan can keep up, especially with J.K. Dobbins questionable and also just performing worse and worse.
Yeah, I'm excited. I guess next I have Tyler Warren out, so I'm still not quite to like all the guys
Mm.
I'd actually want to start on a given week, but it's exciting to. I think this is one of my first weeks of having Gibbs, JSN, and CD, two guys who have acquired, plus JSN, who's wide receiver one in fantasy, all play in the same game. So I'm really excited for that. So I'm really excited to kind of see what my team does this week. Projected 146 effectively, which is the most out of anyone. So I'm hoping I can kind of live up to these expectations.
Yeah, I was looking. I know he hasn't set his team. It's insane. I have 97% win percentage right now before the week even starts. But hey, it doesn't matter. Tyler Warren's out because you have Gadsden and you can't touch this guy. So he should drop 25 or 30, and this should be an easy win for you.
So let's dive into this trade
Oh
that went
boy. I'm
down
rubbing
this
my
week.
hands for this one. This is exciting. This trade just absolutely set the league on fire, which when you look at the players involved, it's kind of funny because this is not like Luka Doncic here that we're talking about. But um Grant gets Matthew Stafford and in exchange, uh no, yes. Man, one of the biggest trades in recent memory. I can't even talk. What a disgrace of a podcast host. TJ receives Shador Sanders and a 2027 third, and he gives Matthew Stafford to the 8-2 Grant Moore. Do you want to start with this one?
Sure. This I'll start just with some context. This is what I think is interesting. After the draft, I actually drafted Matthew Stafford, and I traded him to TJ for a second round pick before the season started because I thought that I was going to be rebuilding, right? I didn't know that JSN was going to do this. I didn't know Tyler Warren was going to do this. I didn't know Scottaboo was going to do what he was going to do. I didn't have CD. I didn't have Jameer Gibbs. So I was like, let me just get a pick out of this old guy. And TJ picked up Stafford thinking he was going to contend as like a backup to Tua because of Tua's injury issues. And so it's just so interesting how our paths have completely flip flopped. And now Matthew Stafford being moved to his third team so far in the league.
Yeah, I think, people freaked out over this trade. I will zag a little bit here. I made an offer for Matthew Stafford. I'll get to that at the end. But I will zag a little bit here and say I do not think this is the worst trade we've had in this league by a long shot. The reason I said in the chat, quote, I'm killing myself was just because of the offer that I had made and I wanted Matthew Stafford myself. Look, I think Grant wins the trade. I mean, as Austin pointed out, Matthew Stafford is the 11th player in fantasy right now. Any contender, I think, would like to have this guy. But I will commend TJ because to me, he had to get rid of Stafford, right? The guy is like 37 years old. You're tanking. To all the people saying this is awful, at least TJ did something. There are so many teams, we may talk about this later. There are so many teams that are tanking or contending and they need to make a move and they don't. So TJ needed to get rid of Stafford. At least he did it. I don't really think Shador is going to be anything. He can't start over Dylan Gabriel, but he was once looked at as a first round talent. So while I don't love the trade, I definitely think TJ could have gotten more from a contender. If you're rebuilding and you want the pick and you actually think Shador could be a solid quarterback, like, who am I to tell TJ how to rebuild? When you're a tanking team and Matthew Stafford's 37, I don't think this trade is absolutely as absurd as people are making it out to be.
I'm up and down. I mean, part of it is, again, I'm just thinking like a text in the group chat like, "Hey, I'm moving Matthew Stafford because like Drake is a quarterback needy team. Grant, of course. I think maybe you would have liked him as well, an upgrade off of. I might have taken a swing for him, upgrade over JJ. So that just feels like maybe didn't try out all of our possible doors. But I will say, Charlie texted me earlier today with that four-team trade y'all were trying to cook up, and he was like, "Am I stupid for not accepting it?" And it had him moving Purdy for some stuff. And I thought he was losing it a little bit. I think it was bad. But my first thought was TJ's getting fleeced, and it was effectively TJ was sending out Stafford and getting back like Shadur and a third or something. And I thought, Stafford just has so much value. And, maybe you're a believer in Shadur. I'm not. The fact that they're playing like 5'8" Dylan Gabriel over him, I think speaks volumes. And I think honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if the Browns pick another quarterback in the top five this year, maybe to get that Mendoza guy out of Indiana. So it's possible Shadur never suits up for the Browns. And then this would just be kind of a net value loss, trading a second for Stafford and then Stafford for a third.
Yeah, it's just doing a lot of heavy lifting to think Shador will be good. And yeah, you could have gotten more. Like I know we always say that, but really a text to the group chat, I really think you could have got more, even though I don't think this is absolutely awful. Can I drop the bombshell now of what I had offered?
Yeah, go for it.
Because you think this is pretty wild, right?
I do.
I offered for Matthew Stafford. This is the part that makes me mad. Again, don't think this trade is like the worst thing I've ever seen. But I offered Michael Penix and a second round pick. If Shador ever manages to play, if he ever gets in a game over 5'8" Dylan Gabriel, I think at best he will be an inconsistent mid quarterback who you're like, ah, man, this guy, like, should we draft a quarterback next year? What do you think Michael Penix is? That is Michael Penix. And I offered a second instead of a third, and Michael Penix is actively playing NFL games right now. So, again, I don't think this is crazy, but just the fact that I offered Penix in a second and that can't beat Shador Sanders in a third, I was really taken aback by that. I really would have thought I would have won out on that there.
Yeah, certainly. And this trade prompted Charlie to once again bring up his discussions of should we have vetoes. So we're just going to kind of discuss the value of having a veto system and not having a veto system. I don't know if you want to go first. You're going to be speaking for why we should not have a veto system, and I'll be speaking for why we should.
I am, and we have 9 minutes left in the Zoom, which is plenty of time because I know we said we only want to do this for a few minutes. If I'm arguing against vetoes, and I know we said this isn't our own opinions, but that's probably the side I would actually be on. I just think like you look at any trade, you're pretty much always going to think there is a winner, right? Like how many trades have there been this year, and how many have you looked at and said that is perfectly even, 100%, cannot pick a side? You're always going to lean one way or the other. And I think people are just likely to be like, oh, I think this team won this trade, so I'm going to veto. Whereas, like this TJ trade, don't love it, but I wouldn't veto it because it's a rebuilding team and a tanking team. If that's how TJ wants to rebuild, again, maybe Shedeur Sanders will be good. And then he'd be like, why'd you veto? So I just think it kind of opens the door for people to just veto anything because they think it's unfair. And that's every single trade. And then we would just have a fun league or not fun league with no trade. So I just think it's kind of a slippery slope if you're arguing for the no veto side.
Yeah, I think the value of veto though is in the sense of protecting the individual and then protecting the integrity of the league because of how impactful like one trade can be in terms of altering like the entire landscape of the league. I actually had this kind of debate in one of my redraft leagues with some of my friends from back home, where a guy traded Emeka Egbuka for CD Lamb, and this was like just this was before Egbuka really established himself. Like we're talking like week 2, week 3, and we are just like, this is crazy. Like this is a guy who's just booming to start the season, and he was not going to be able to maintain this. And he was trading it to a guy who was a huge Ohio State fan. So of course he's wants Egbuka because he went to Ohio State, and it just felt like you know my buddy Trey, who accepted his trade and was sitting out CD, doesn't really follow football, and it just felt like he's kind of being taken advantage here for not really following the league as tightly as some of the other guys. And so the thought behind the veto system is it kind of builds a line of defense where we're saying, hey, like we're gonna step in and prevent you from kind of handicapping yourself. It's like David Stern blocking the Chris Paul trade to the Lakers. It's like, hey, we're not actually going to let you ruin your franchise, or setting up rules where contracts can only be so long to prevent owners and people in charge of these teams from putting themselves in a really harmful position because of how impactful one trade can be.
Yeah, whenever I play 2K My League, I can never trade my first round picks because of some idiot Cavs owner from the 1980s. So I'm not always a huge fan of these rules to stop people from handicapping themselves. Like, I guess kind of the counter argument would be, we've been in this league for a year. Like at this point, if you can't not get fleeced every time you make a trade, I think that's kind of maybe on you. And I guess my other kind of counter argument, I just think it's interesting. I mean, Egbuka kept that up for a few more weeks and now looks pretty good again. CD ended up getting hurt. Like that would kind of be my fear is would we veto a trade and then later on it's like actually that might have looked pretty good. Maybe that guy was onto something, but just because we disagreed with him, we stopped him from making a really good move.
Yeah, I hear that. I think maybe the counter argument to that would just be, okay, maybe you stop one trade that actually wouldn't have been bad, but 1 out of 10 is a misfire, a poor veto, while 9 out of 10 are no, they actually would have just hamstringed their whole franchise for forever.
That's fair. I mean, I guess we certainly probably do have more bad trades that are actually bad than bad trades that end up being good. So I definitely hear you
Yeah,
on that. It's an interesting topic. Maybe we'll have Mr. Parsons seems very passionate. Maybe we can have him on as a
he
guest
does,
sometime to debate this a little bit.
certainly.
We have 5 minutes. Oh, we never put the versus logo up there the whole time. That's tough. We have 5 minutes left. I know we said we might talk briefly because it's been a quiet trade deadline, except for that one trade. I know we said we might talk briefly about just some moves we'd like to see. Is there anyone you would like to see get active? Any moves you would like to see before week 11 ends?
We did mention this. One thing that I actually just want to mention, just kind of as like a general league philosophy, is I think it's interesting that we have a quiet trade deadline. So I feel like now is the time when sellers have the most power because there is this hard stop. Like if you're going to make a move to upgrade this position, like you have to make it now or you won't be able to, like you're stuck with your team. And so it's interesting, like how the flurry of moves we had after like week 6 to week 7. And it'd be interesting if maybe teams had kind of waited and waited. And I'd be curious next season if we see more of that. Some teams wanting to just kind of get closer to the deadline. Because imagine right now, you're a team who's got like like TJ having Stafford or maybe Tucker having Herbert. It's like, would that price be higher now that some of these buyers, their back is against the wall, where it's like, I have to make this move now or I'm stuck with freaking Geno Smith. And it's like, you could really drive the price up by just basically saying, you're really going to rock into the fantasy playoffs with Geno Smith as your super flex. That's just an interesting philosophy to see next year if maybe there's just some more patience and utilizing the deadline as a seller as kind of another factor in the trades.
That's why I think again, like straight up, the value's not crazy, but I think TJ could have gotten some people really desperate for Matthew Stafford. Like I could have seen myself getting swept up in a bidding war like that. So, yeah, I think as a seller, you can do those sorts of things. I'll just throw out. I would love to see Chitty make some moves, and I know none of this is new. We've said this, but I reached out to him about a couple of guys who were a little older, and he said that he wanted them for next year to, I guess, make a push, but. I'm saying this honestly. I'm not going after those guys anymore. No ulterior motives here, but I don't think it's going to get better. Like you're 1-9 and your team is really old. Do you think you're just suddenly going to win the championship next year? I doubt it. I really would consider blowing it up. This goes without saying, but Nixon, if you don't get a wide receiver, I don't know why you're like. I mean, I don't want to say I don't know why you're in the league. I'm glad you're in the league. I enjoy like talking to you and you're my friend. But like are you even do you even care about winning if you don't go out and get a receiver? You have all three firsts and 3 seconds. You could get a stud and you need one. I just think Nixon has to go out and get a wide receiver. So those are two of the things I'd like to see. Again, we've talked about them all year, but those are just moves that I feel like they just almost have to go make.
Yeah, I will say kind of a counter argument to my little spiel I just gave though is because Chitty has waited, it's like who actually is going to try and buy like a Saquon Barkley? It's like I don't really have the assets for that, unless Chitty like wants a second or 2 seconds for second, which would certainly be not enough value. So that's another thing that's interesting is because we've had these flurry of moves, it's like, are you going to make a move for Saquon? It's like what do you even have to give that he would be interested in? And so that also kind of puts us in a predicament. Like Nixon wants a wide receiver, but of our tanking teams, what wide receivers do they have left that are valuable? And that could be kind of a difficult
Like the
situation.
opposite of rosterflation, our pick situation as contenders is so bad. Like I know every time I've tried to trade with Evan, he's like, "You have nothing I want." I'm like, honestly, fair. I don't really have any picks or young players. And then roster deflation amongst the bottom teams, their rosters are so rough that their best players as contenders, I don't even know if we're interested in. Is this league
Yeah.
cooked? Like, are we? I feel like we're in a really tough spot right now. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I think we'll be fine because next year all of the tankers will use those picks and they'll have guys who are interested in it in again.
Hmm.
And like let's say next year we go into the season and Christian McCaffrey gets hurt and Derrick Henry's not playing well, and then all of a sudden you're selling players. And now you're at the bottom and now you've got picks back and
I think
so
there is a chance. We only have a minute, 18 seconds. I think there is a chance that I just blow it up after this season. Like I'm big on sell while you're hot. I'm not going to let these guys' value completely go to waste. We might be, this is our championship season. I don't know. We'll see. This has been a great discussion. I've enjoyed this. We have 1 minute left. Anything else you want to throw in before we go?
um I would love nothing more than to do an emergency Saturday night mousetrap episode because we had the biggest trade go down in league history. So y'all get on it.
Yeah, I tried. We tried to make a four-teamer today. Didn't happen. Thank you all so much for watching episode 17, and we will see y'all in the next one.